Yes, and I can forgive you. The way you said a few minutes ago, Darren, that there's only 4 weeks to go, it sounded like you were suffering a little bit from Tory leadership fatigue, and I'm sure many of our viewers are as well. And I think this debate really is, something we really began this leadership contest with between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, was whether tax cuts were appropriate now. And I have a lot of sympathy actually for Liz Truss's position on this in general, because I think there are signs of the economy slowing, and some tax cuts, particularly a national insurance tax cut, will bring a little bit more dynamism to the economy, which we need. But overall, if we really want to help people through the cost of living crisis, I think Rishi Sunak is closer to the truth. The most vulnerable people who will be hit hardest by rises in energy prices won't really be helped by tax cuts, as the former Chancellor's article in The Sun makes clear very persuasively today. And so handouts is a pejorative term, but I think we need to ensure that the benefit system really does protect the most vulnerable, including pensioners, from these extraordinary rises in energy prices that we're going to face by the autumn.
Isn't that the honest truth, though, Tim, given how extraordinarily high those energy prices are going to be, that in the end, even for Liz Truss, tax cuts will not be enough? Whether it's Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss, they're going to have to go, both of them, a lot further this autumn, this winter.
Absolutely. And I think, the language that commentators are using, that newspapers are using, of a furlough type scheme, a furlough scale scheme, is, I think, appropriate. We haven't experienced inflation of this sort for 40 years. We haven't really experienced the inflation of the sort that we'll see by the end of this year in the post-war period. So something very dramatic is going to have to be done by government. It's going to put further strain on already strained public finances, and it's going to be very difficult for the economy. But no, I am not someone who wants to exaggerate the dangers normally, but I do realistically fear that if we don't introduce some kind of furlough scale scheme, we will see civil disorder on the streets, because quite simply, if mums and dads cannot feed their children, if people can't heat their homes, people will panic, and we must help people before we get to that stage.
And just very finally and quickly, Tim, for the time being, if you could, who do you think is going to get the blame for this? Because clearly we know there's been a pandemic. We know the government had to take extraordinary measures. We know inflation is hitting almost every major Western economy. We know this essentially not down just to the government, if you like. And yet we had a world financial crisis in 2008 that the Conservatives very cleverly but pinned on the Labour Party, if you like. Will people out there, will they blame this fundamentally on the government, do you think, in the time to come? Or will people understand, or at least in part understand, that this is not entirely down to the current governments?
I hope, in all fairness, they will blame it on Vladimir Putin and the extraordinary war that we perhaps are failing to adequately cover now. It's fallen down the news agendas quite significantly of late. I think the real political question, though, Darren, I don't know whether you'd agree with me on this, is even if voters blame, for example, the Conservatives more than the opposition or whatever for these events, the key question is, who do they think will be best placed to get the country out of it? There's that expression, hold on to nurse for fear of something worse. And I think there's still a real possibility that even if the Tories do get some of the blame for this crisis, they'll look at Keir Starmer, they'll look at Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, and they'll look at the sort of the left-wingers that still surround Keir Starmer, and they'll think, OK, I'm not particularly happy with the Tories, but I think Labour could make the situation worse. And that, I think, will be the real political question that will determine how well the two parties do at the next election.